We don't like flips. Why? Stay tuned and we'll tell you why we are not big fans of our buyers buying flips. There's no denying that all you see right now is everybody flipping something. Somebody's watching some program on HTV or some other show, seeing how easy it is to flip a house, buy some, dump, throw a couple $1,000s into it and turn around and sell it for $500,000, make a big tidy profit. What we want to show you is what you need to be careful about as a buyer of one of these flips. So it may be a great business for you. All the power to you if you're out there being able to hustle around and turn dilapidated homes into, Taj Mahals. But if you're a buyer out there right now, and we know it's very hard to find the right home, and it can become very easy to get attracted to the bright, shiny objects that are known as flipped homes. We're going to give you a few pointers of where we don't really think that may be the best option for you. As we said, a flipper is somebody that goes and gets a rundown or dated house, and they look to try to improve it. And there are many areas in neighborhoods that clearly have been improved because of flippers coming in and doing really nice jobs of updating homes, updating neighborhoods, bringing the values up in neighborhoods, which is all beneficial. Beneficial for the sellers, beneficial for the neighborhood, beneficial for a community because it looks better, beneficial for the tax base because the municipalities are able to charge higher property taxes. So there are some benefits to having homes that are kept up and looking good. But the key is, has that updating been done properly? And often, just like in many other things, there are people who like to do the shortcuts. People who really don't want to invest the right amount of money or the right type of skills to do the work correctly. They just want to get in there and make it look pretty, like putting lipstick on a pig and getting somebody, what they would probably term some sucker, to come in and buy it from them. Unloading onto you something that's cost you a lot of money and may yield you nothing but problems. So we don't want you to be in that environment. We want you to have a very good understanding when you're looking at these flipped homes, what you're really talking about, what you're really looking at. Let's talk about some of the things you need to be wary of when you're looking at flips. And we caution our buyers all the time on this because I will tell you, compared to an estate, compared to a hoarder's home, compared to a home that somebody's lived in for the past 30 years and really hasn't done anything, a flip can be really attractive, especially if the flipper has been watching Joanna Gaines and has shiplap everywhere and everything's all nice and gray and the marble is all white, or the corian or the quartz is all white, and the bathrooms are all shiny and they've got that nice tile on the floor, and must have unloaded a ton of the pergo for the flooring and put it all the way around, and everything looks beautiful. But you don't know what's been done underneath. Here's why we're leery of them. One, we don't know who did the work. We don't know the skill of the worker. We don't know the competence of the worker. We don't know whether or not the worker has been licensed or certified. We know nothing about that. And you may say that the owner of the property, the flipper, may say, well, they're a contractor, but you don't know who they subbed the work out to. You don't know if that person was there being supervised on a regular basis. You don't know what problems occurred as they're doing the work. There is no renovation that anybody has ever done where there hasn't been a problem, where there hasn't been something that's come up and you have to do some other workaround, change of plans, new additional monies being spent, something. You know none of that. That's can be troublesome. We don't have a complete history of the home, and nor do we know the problems that the previous owner had. Often these homes are purchased as either foreclosures or estates in which there is no known or available history of the home. And nothing really is disclosed from that history in those types of scenarios. You don't know if they've ever had water in the basement. You don't know if they've ever had a leaky roof. You don't know if they've ever had any kind of structural problems or termites or some other history of the property that may have occurred. And the current seller is very easy to say, I don't know. I've never lived here. It's nice to know the history of a property. It's nice to know if there was a problem, what did the prior owner do to correct it or repair it. It's also nice to know to have somebody accountable in case they lied about the history of the home. You have none of that with a flip. You are going in blind and all you know is what the flipper has said that they did to the property. Disclosures are limited. The flipper is usually saying, I've never lived here. I don't know any of the history of the property. I could tell you what I did. I could tell you I put in a new bathroom. I put in a new kitchen. Maybe I put in a new furnace or air conditioner. Maybe a new roof. Maybe not. But I know nothing about anything else. I know nothing about any problems that's ever happened. I know nothing about if there's any kind of disputes between property owners and neighbors, whether or not we've had any kind of issues among borders. Nothing. So that's very limited. Another thing that is equally concerning is that they may not, the flipper may have not pulled permits for the work. The nice thing about permits is that you've got some independent source, usually a municipality, come in and verify that the work has been done according to the proper codes of that municipality or the proper codes for that specific industry. Electrician, plumber. There's certain standards that they have to follow. That's why they're licensed. And there are permits that are required for certain types of changes that are made to a structure. If you add a structure onto a home, clearly permits are required. Refinishing or finishing basements sometimes require permits. Each municipality has different requirements. But if no permits have been pulled, you don't know if any of the work has been done according to local codes and local standards. It could have been done better than local codes, but more likely, if there's no permits pulled, it was probably done with insufficient standards to local codes. So that could be concerning. Equally concerning is that there may have been permits pulled, which is great. Permits, I've got third parties coming in to verify the work and look at things, but the question to ask is, have those permits been closed? Because an interesting thing happens in many municipalities. When you pull a permit, they often notify the county assessor's office because a permit means you're doing some work that's probably going to be additive in value. And the county is going to want to know about that because that may affect your assessment and may increase your property taxes. One of the reasons why people don't want to pull permits is because they really don't want anybody to know. They don't want anybody looking at the stuff, and they don't want to have to pay extra property taxes. So often what a flipper will do, if they want to show legitimacy, is that they will pull permits, because they may be required to. It's obvious they're doing work on the house and somebody's going to come and question it. So they pull the permits. But they do not close the permits until just before settlement. Why is this a concern? Well, when the permits are closed, the local municipalities may also notify the county assessor's office that the permits have been closed. The work has been completed. The value has been added. And shortly after that permit is closed, often just after you've settled, maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks after you've taken possession of the home and the county gets through its paperwork saying, oh, these permits are closed, we need to go take a look, you're going to get a notification from the county assessor's office. And they're going to say, hey, you had some work done. The permit's closed. We want to come and take a look and see what value has been added because we want to tax you for that. So the seller, the flipper, he did it legitimately by doing the permits, but he didn't close them out in a manner of which they're going to be able to notify you, and as they're selling property, what the new taxes are going to be, because they don't know. So you're in your home, and you have maybe spent everything you've got, and maybe you qualified just under the breadth of what your qualifications were for mortgage, principal, interest, maybe PMI, taxes, and maybe HOA, condo association, something like that, then all of a sudden you get a notification from the assessor's office that your taxes now are going to go up. And so now that monthly number that you pay that has the taxes in it is going to go up. And that's going to be a big surprise to you. And depending upon how much value was determined, was added to the property, that could be a substantial amount. Maybe it's $100 a month. Maybe it's $200 a month. Maybe it's $300 a month extra that you're going to be paying because the permits were not closed while you were doing your purchasing of the product. That is something you need to be aware of. Often these flipped homes are owned by LLCs. They have few assets and they are defined as LLCs to protect the real owners from any kind of lawsuits. These LLCs have very little assets. So if they still exist after the home is sold, and oftentimes they don't, you'll find that they have very little assets for you to be able to go after in any kind of lawsuit. So let's say you purchase a home from the flipper that's an LLC, and you find out you've got a defect 3 months down the way, that something's wrong with the house. And you find out that the flipper knew about that defect and did not disclose it to you. So you may want to initiate some sort of lawsuit. So you go and try to sue the LLC, and it may or may not exist, but then you also find out that the LLC has no money. So even if you won, there's no money for you to get. And the owner themselves is protected because they hid behind an LLC. So it's one of the reasons why they do that. And that's why you have to be careful. When you're purchasing these flips, you may not have any recourse against anybody for any problems that occur in the future. Another thing to keep in mind is that even if you have the home inspected, which you should, much of what was changed is hidden behind the walls. If they change the electrical, if they change the plumbing, God forbid if they took out a wall and really wasn't supposed to be removed. A lot of that you don't know. You don't know what's behind the scenes. They put the drywall on and paint it, put the trim up. You can't see. You can't see what's been insulated. You have no idea. And you say, well, I'm going to get it inspected. Inspectors look at things from the visual aspect of things. They can only really inspect what they see. They don't do invasive type of inspections. In fact, some of that stuff you'd have to tear the drywall off in order to really know what took place. Thinking that you're protected just by having an inspection, there are still much you may not know because of the way the flips are done. Something else to keep in mind is that the seller or the flipper may have paid too much for the house and put too much money in the renovations. So they're not really realistic about the price. They need to get so much money out of the house in order to make it a worthwhile investment. Flippers are of a varied breed. Some are professional and they do this as a living, and they have a business, they have a plan, and they have a budget, and they have people, and they are very effective at knowing how much to pay for a house, how much to, when to stop if the house starts getting too expensive, how to manage their renovations, how to manage the costs, and how much they're going to be able to get for the home after all the selling costs and what they're going to net. They're a machine. It's a business. Then there are the flippers who are, my buddy next door and I think we're going to go and flip a house because we see everybody else doing it. It looks like easy money. They pool their money together. They pay too much for a house because they have to have that house in order for them to do their business. And then they underestimate how much it's going to really take to do renovations because they're really not experts at doing renovations. And then they want to put the house on the market and they find out that, in order for them to do so and make some money on this, they need to price it at some price that's going to be unrealistic. So then the home will sit on the market and they really don't want to cut the price because if they do so, they're not going to be able to make any money, especially if they have taken out some sort of short-term loan either against their house or gone to some of these hard money lenders and they're at 10%, 11% interest rates trying to figure out how they're going to pay off the money that they used to borrow to order to pay for this house and pay for these renovations. And you'll find that they're going to be in a difficult situation and they're not going to be realistic about the price, or they won't be realistic about doing any kind of repairs that may be discovered as a result of the inspection. Another reason why you want to avoid flips. Something else we always see whenever we look at these TV shows, the first thing anybody says is, We need to open it all up. I got to have an open concept. So they go to some house that has all these walls in it and say, well, we're going to take out this wall, we're going to take out that wall. And you know what? Not all walls can be removed. Some of them are structurally important. And we don't know that the flipper has brought in the right expertise, either a carpenter or a structural engineer who has the knowledge about how homes are built, how they're structured, what is important in order to maintain that structure, and they just may go through and start whipping out walls. Because everyone loves the destruction part and the demolition part of the flip. And they just start going nuts about taking out the walls. You don't know how that's going to affect your roof sometime in the future. You don't know how it's going to affect your other walls in the future. You don't know how it's going to affect your foundation. So just because somebody has opened up a house and made it look great doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be solid. Another thing that happens is that as the flipper starts going through the project and they start finding out they're running out of money, then they start cutting corners. So they may have grand plans for, quartz countertops and state-of-the-art cabinets and stainless steel this and stainless steel that as far as appliances and the higher priced trim and all the things that really set apart a home. Well, they're going to run out of money. And then all of a sudden they start cutting corners. And either they start doing the work themselves instead of bringing in professionals, and it starts getting sloppy, or you start seeing mismatch of materials. They started floors in one material and then they had to switch to another material because it was cheaper, or they're not paying as much attention to the fit and finish. Things aren't caulked properly, and all of a sudden you start seeing corners being cut. And so the flip that maybe started out looking good starts ending up having bad parts to it. And if they cut out the stuff you can see, what did they cut out that you can't see? Another thing to keep alert for is there may be conflicts of interest. The selling agent may also be one of the owners. One of the things realtors like to do, and they're always being pushed to become investors themselves, because it's been said that realtors see the best deals first. And that's true. We are often first in any kind of opportunity. And so we see many different types of homes, and that may be something that could be attractive for those realtors who also like to do flips. But all of a sudden now you've got a conflict of interest. The person representing the seller is the seller. And that's going to be something you're going to want to be paying a lot of attention to, because that agent is not really speaking objectively. They have their own interest in mind. And especially you should be aware if you have decided that you want to work with that listing agent to represent you as the buyer. I can tell you then your interest will not be represented. That seller and that agent, who are one, are going to make sure their interests are protected over and above everybody else's. So if you think you're getting a deal because you reached out to the listing agent about a flip of which you don't know whether or not they own or not, they're supposed to disclose that, but sometimes you have to dig around, especially if it's owned by an LLC and you don't know if the agent has money or an investment interest in that LLC. And they may not be honest about it. You need to be attuned to all of that and ask those type of questions. Another concern we have is that flippers often skimp on the important items, like the mechanical systems, which are big ticket items and get you to focus on the shiny and new. The roof is important, but it's expensive. The furnace, the air conditioner, the water heater, the leaks around the basement walls, those are important things, but they're expensive. And so the flipper may not really put a lot of money into those. If they're really not broken, but they're old, but you can get them to work somehow, or paint over the basement walls so you don't see the water penetration, they're going to get you to focus on the open concept, and the sunken or the soaking bathtub. But the big ticket items are the ones that usually fail, especially at the time when you need them most. The leak in the roof doesn't occur on bright sunny days. The leak in the roof occurs in downpours. The furnace doesn't break in the summer. The furnace breaks on the coldest day of the year, when you have just brought your newborn baby home from the hospital. That's when they break. And the flipper doesn't really care about that because they're long gone. But you do. And that $10,000, $20,000 expense, which you need to do immediately when those things break, now become your problem. So keep that in mind as well. So here's how you can protect yourself. If you insist on buying a flip, you need to follow some of these guidelines to protect yourself and still be aware that even doing all of this, you can find yourself owning something that may be less desirable than what you thought when you first got it. So first thing is ask questions. Who did the work? Who owns the property? Who's also an investor in the LLC? Does the realtor have an interest in the property? Did they get permits? Are the permits closed? Have the taxes been reassessed? Do not have the listing agent represent you as the buyer. You need your own advocate. You need your own buyer's agent who's focused on you and your interest and put your interest above everybody else's. If you go with a listing agent, and especially if that listing agent is an owner of that flip, you are going to find yourself at a serious disadvantage. Check the workmanship. If they paid attention to the details, there's good chance they paid attention to the big things. But if the details look sloppy, you can almost guarantee that all the big stuff hidden behind the walls is also sloppy. Be prepared to walk away. Don't get emotionally connected. I know you're going to walk in and you're going to say, oh, it's everything I saw on HGTV. I've got to have it. You cannot get yourself emotionally connected to that property. This is a very important decision. Be prepared always to walk away. If things aren't right, if things don't feel right, if your head is telling you something doesn't seem right, don't let your heart get it in the way of a good, smart decision. Ask for details about the work and if permits were obtained and if licensed professionals were used. Who did the work for the electrical? Who did the work for the plumbing? Those are skilled resources. If the guy says, hey, we do this ourselves, we're pretty good with electric, or, my buddy, his father is a plumber and he watched him when he was growing up, that's not necessarily a licensed professional. A licensed professional wants to make sure the work is done correctly. You know why? Because their license is on the line. If something happens to that house, God forbid, there's a fire in the house, and the fire is determined to be caused by an electrical failure, they're going to look to see who did the work. And if a licensed professional did the work, one, he's going to have to attest to the fact that he did it properly according to his license and to the codes and standards that they have to adhere to, but they're also probably carrying insurance for any kind of error that they may make that may help you get paid for the repairs that may be necessary. If you've got unlicensed people doing that and they don't have insurance, you're screwed. You're screwed. Get an inspection. Even though an inspector looks at things visually and they cannot do invasive type of inspections, they can look around enough and give you an idea of whether or not this flip has some concerns. They can get up in the attic. They can see if there's insulation up there. They can see if there's daylight coming through the roof. They can see if there's any kind of mold present. They can see if things have been kind of like covered up and covered over and maybe get a little idea of what's going on behind the scenes. Do your due diligence and get an inspection. Review the history of the property. Your agent should have access to your multiple listing service. Your multiple listing service can trace down and see, has this property been listed in the past? Was it listed on the market when the flipper bought it? Were there disclosures out there when the flipper bought it? Are there comments maybe in the notes or the agent descriptions in which you can get some clues about the property? You can also see, at least in some of the MLSs, you can see if somebody's taken loan out against the property. How much money has the flipper borrowed against the property? How much do they have at stake? How much does it look like they need to sell the home for in order to make any kind of money? That history is available in many of the MLSs around the country. Do your homework. Don't rush just because there's a hype and a frenzy. Do your due diligence. Have your agent do some work for you and understand about the property. We're going to put a little link to a site out there from ABI Home Services. He's got a great little Instagram site. We're going to give you a link to his website. He's got some great pictures on there, some flips that people did that clearly people did not know what they were doing in putting these together. And those should be easy things to be able to detect. But clearly, if you have an inspector, that's going to be able to help you as well get a feel for whether or not this flip was done properly. Not all flips are bad, but I will tell you that we put a very wary eye on our flips when we're looking at flips for buyers. We personally don't do any flipping ourselves. That's not our business. Our business is focusing on servicing our clients, helping our clients sell their properties, and helping our clients find the right properties for them to be able to purchase. So hope this video has been of value to you. If you do, drop us a comment, give us a like, subscribe so you can see more and get notified when more of these videos come out. Have a great day.